Why is Goblin Piledriver never sad? Because he has protection from the blues.
This video is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. If you're looking for cards in the US, look no further, as you can use the promo code MTGMudsta to get you 5% off anything on the site. Or if you're in Canada like me, you can use the same promo code at Multizone to get 10% off your orders of singles. If cards aren't what you're looking for, Original Magic Art has playmats, tokens, and sweet art that you can use that same promo code to help you get 5% off your order there. And if you just want to help out the channel, you can always consider becoming a patron for as little as $1 a month and join the generic Goblin Gang. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game is another multi-zone matchup with Miguel playing Runo. He keeps Arcane Denial, an island, 2 swamps, Nimble Obstructionist, Hinder, and Deranged Assistant. Maximus is playing Meren, keeping a forest, 2 swamps, Golgari Guildgate, Pitiless Plunderer, Sakur Trivelder, and a Vermin Gorger. I have borrowed my buddy Kevin's Gor Muldrak Amphenologist deck, keeping Peer Pressure, Island, Rejuvenating Springs, Arcane Denial, Garruk's Uprising, Theft of Dreams, and Hinterland Harbor. Dom is playing Kethis Super Friends, keeping Core Haven, Flooded Strand, Bayou, Kamal's Druidic Vow, Ajani Steadfast, and Garruk Cursed Huntsman. Maximus wins the die roll and starts us off. He plays a tapped Golgari Guildgate. I just play an island. Miguel plays a command tower and passes. Dom drops a Flooded Strand and cracks it, losing a total of 3 to go and find a Temple Garden, and has it come in untapped. He shortcuts first by playing a Birds of Paradise, which he'll cast, and passes. Maximus plays a forest and casts Soul Ring. He's then able to cast a Fertilid before passing. I play Hinterland Harbor and pass. Miguel plays a swamp and casts Deranged Hermit. Dom untaps and draws. He plays a Bayou for turn, and then pays 3 mana for Kethis. Maximus has a swamp for turn, and pays 1 black for Viscera Seer. He then taps enough to cast Meren, and going to combat, hits Dom for 2 with the Fertilid. In his second main phase, he sacrifices the Seer to scry 1, and gains an experience counter. He then passes, with Meren bringing back the Seer at the end of the turn to the field. I play an island, and just cast Garruk's Uprising. Miguel plays an island for turn as well, and activates his Deranged Assistant for a mana and milling a card. It's a creature, and he then casts Runo, who upon entering, lets Miguel put the creature card that he just milled on top of his library. Dom draws and plays a Core Haven. He then casts Mangara thanks to the reduction from Kethis for only 3, and passes. Maximus plays out a Blood Artist in his main phase, and goes to combat. He goes at me with the Fertilid, which I just take. Once the damage is dealt, he pays to remove a counter from the Fertilid to go and find a basic. He then sacrifices the Blood Artist to the Seer, draining Dom for 1, scrying 1, and adding an experience counter. He then passes, bringing the Blood Artist back at the end of turn. I just play a forest and have to pass. Miguel draws and reveals the creature he'd put on top, and transforms Runo into Krothis, Tyrant of the Deep. He then plays a swamp for turn and casts Dimir Locket. Miguel thinks about attacking, but decides to hold off. Dom casts Nissa Vastwood Seer and finds a forest as she enters to put to hand. He then plays it for his land drop, passing turn. Maximus draws and moves through his phases to go to combat, swinging the Fertilid and the Seer at me. In his second main phase, he casts Sakur Trivelder, and also removes the final counter from the Fertilid to go and find a basic. With the Fertilid dying, he drains Miguel for 1 with a Blood Artist trigger, and gets an experience counter, and passes. At the end of turn, he gets a Meren trigger, and targets the Fertilid, but Miguel cycles the Nimble Obstructionist to stifle the trigger. I play Rejuvenating Springs as my land for turn, and tap enough mana for Gor Muldrak. With my commander on the stack, I use Double Major to make a non-legendary token copy of him, and Dom also gets to draw from Mangara for me casting my second spell. I then pass, and at the end of turn, both of my Gors trigger. Responding to these, Maximus sacrifices his Elder to go and find a basic, and the Seer to itself. He gets 2 Blood Artist triggers, draining me for 2, and we then resolve the Gor triggers, with Miguel, Maximus, and myself each making 2 of the 4/3 Salamander tokens. With the tokens coming in, I get to draw 2 cards thanks to the Uprising. Miguel draws and goes to attack. He swings Kethis and the Salamanders all at Maximus. Miguel makes a token copy of the token Salamander, and Maximus blocks with his Salamanders on the 2 attacking ones. Damage is then dealt, with 4 Salamanders dying, and Miguel getting drained for 4, while Meren gains 2 more experience counters. Maximus still takes 7, 3 of which is commander damage. Miguel then uses his assistant to make some mana and mills Dread Return, and then casts a strategic planning. He looks at his top 3, keeping 1 and binning the rest. He then casts Nile Spellbomb and passes. Dom plays a Tomb of Arami for his land for turn and casts Vraska Golgari Queen. Once she's out, Dom downticks her to take out the token copy of Gor and passes. Maximus draws and plays a forest. He casts Yavimaya Elder and sacrifices it to itself once it's out, drawing a card and then going to find 2 basic lands to put to hand. He gets another experience counter and drains me for 1. He then casts a Devoted Druid, and Dom draws a card from Mangara. Moving to his end step, Maximus brings back the Elder thanks to his Meren trigger and passes to me. I draw and tap 3 mana in my main phase for Theft of Dreams, targeting Miguel. I get to draw 3 cards because of his tapped creatures. I then move through my phases to my end step, getting only 1 Gor trigger. And Maximus responds by sacrificing the Elder again to get some basics and draw a card and drain me for 1. This then has Maximus and I each getting a token at the end of turn, and I draw from the Uprising, seeing a 4/3 enter and pass. Miguel plays an island and taps the Deranged Assistant to mill a card and make a mana. He goes to combat and goes back at Maximus with his commander and his tokens. He makes another token with Crosis, and moving to blocks, Maximus stops 1 Salamander with his Salamander, trading, and chumps with the Devoted. He gets 3 drains, all of which go on Miguel, and then takes another 7, 3 of which is from Crosis. He also gets more experience counters, which he doesn't really care about past 8, he says. In his second main phase, Miguel then flashes back Dread Return by sacrificing his tokens and assistant, and brings back the Junkwinder, and this has Maximus draining Dom for 3. Dom floats a green from a forest and upticks Vraska, sacrificing the tapped forest and drawing a card plus gaining a life. He then taps the rest of his mana for Kamal's Druidic Vow, which I move to counter with Arcane Denial. After a quick promise of not stopping his next turn, Miguel agrees to negate my counter, and Dom gets to resolve his legendary Genesis Wave. He reveals his top 5, but only gets to keep Catilda, Ancient Tomb, and Prismatic Vista. He then cracks the Vista, losing 1, and goes to find a swamp. Dom then plays out Kaya the Inexorable, and downticks her to exile the Blood Artist, and passes to Maximus. Maximus plays a forest and casts in rapid succession a Pitiless Plunderer and then a Caustic Caterpillar. He then moves to his end step and brings back the Yavimaya Elder with his Meren trigger. I play a Scavenger Grounds as my land for turn and cast Wild Growth onto one of my forests. I then pass and Gor triggers. Miguel's the only one to get a token, and with it entering, this triggers his Junkwinder and he taps down Dom's Kethis. Miguel draws and goes to combat. Crosis and the Junkwinder go at me, while the Salamander goes at Dom. With Crosis attacking, Miguel gets to make a token copy of the Junkwinder, which is actually 2 copies because it's a serpent. The tokens come in and see that they're tokens, not to mention the real one seeing them come in as well, which has Miguel getting 6 tap down triggers. He hits all of Dom's board, and 2 of my Salamanders, and the new attacking tokens go at Kaya and Vraska to take them out. Dom then takes 4, while I take 8, 3 of which is commander damage, and Miguel then passes. Dom plays a Maze of Ith, which transforms Nissa into Nissa Sage Animist. He upticks her, and I cast Harrow in response, with Dom continuing and revealing Veil of Summer, while I go and find 2 basics. Dom also gets into the ramp game with 3 visits, and goes to find an overgrown tomb. Dom then passes, and at the end of turn, Miguel uses Nile Spellbomb to exile Maximus's graveyard. Once that's done, Maximus sacrifices his Yavimaya Elder, drawing a card, and going to find 2 basics, and makes a treasure token. Maximus draws, and plays a swamp for turn. He casts Spawning Pit, and then passes through his phases, bringing back the Elder at the end of turn. I cast Reigns of Power in my main phase, and target Miguel, who sadly counters it with Saw It Coming. I then put out a Coat of Arms which swiftly meets its end with a Hinder, and I put it to the bottom. We then move to my end step with Gor giving Dom and I a token, and the token entering draws me a card from Garruk's Uprising. Miguel draws for turn, and Maximus uses the Caterpillar to take out his locket. He gains a treasure token, as well from the Plunderer Scene at die and an experience counter. Miguel then hits to combat, but goes a bit fast, since Maximus wants to use Mortality Sphere on Croesus. Miguel responds to this with an Arcane Denial, but has no counter magic as Dom puts Swords to Plowshares to the stack, and exiles his commander. Miguel gains some life, and moves through his phases, recasting Runo, and putting on top of his library a Rot-Tide Gargantua from his graveyard. Dom's upkeep has Miguel drawing 1 and Maximus drawing 2. This isn't great for Miguel since he'd set up a flip for Runo on his turn, but unfortunately that's life. Dom finally gets to untap his creatures, and then upticks Nissa, putting Untadake the Cloudkeeper onto the field tapped after he reveals it. Dom then taps his humans for mana thanks to Catilda, and some lands, to help cast Eugene the Dragon Nerd. He then downticks the dragon by 7, to exile pretty much the entire board. Maximus responds to this to save his board through various sacrifice effects, leaving him with a decent amount of treasure tokens once he's done. Dom then casts a Garruk Wildspeaker, and untaps some lands, and puts out an Esper Sentinel. At the end of turn, Maximus pays to remove some counters from his Spawning Pit to make a spawn token. Maximus draws and plays a Swamp. He taps enough to recast Meren, and then drops Primal Druid and Vermin Gorger. He finishes with a Reclamation Sage, who takes out the Esper Sentinel as it enters. Maximus then passes, bringing back the Pitiless Plunderer thanks to Meren. My turn has an island coming in, and I cast Cultivate, because we know I need more lands. Miguel draws and taps enough for a Cyclone Summoner. This bounces everything but the Giant, and he passes to Dom. Dom plays a Bountiful Promenade, and recasts Garruk Wildspeaker. He loses 2 from tapping the Untadake, and then untaps 2 lands of Garruk once he's resolved. Dom then taps enough for Primeval's Glorious Rebirth, bringing back Ugin, Kaya, Vraska, and Elish Norn. He downticks Kaya to exile the Cyclone Summoner, and upticks Vraska, and sacrifices a land to gain 1 life and draw a card, and then upticks Ugin to bolt Miguel. Maximus untaps, and plays out a Soul Ring. He recasts Meren and then the Primal Druid again. He then plays a Swamp from hand, and recasts the Spawning Pit. He passes to me, and at the end of turn, brings back his Elder. I play a Flooded Grove as Maximus sacrifices that poor Elder once more, and I pass turn. Miguel plays an island and casts that Rot-Tide Gargantuan we'd seen him return to the top of his library earlier. He exploits itself, and Dom and Maximus each sacrifice a creature. With the Primal Druid dying, Maximus gets to go and find a land. Dom draws, and plays out a Johnny Steadfast, losing some life from Mamari and Untadake. He then downticks the Catman to add a loyalty counter to all of his walkers, and is able to ultimate Ugin. He draws 7, gains 7, and puts from hand 7 permanents. This is just an absurd amount of Planeswalkers, Karth the Lion, Nevernyarl's Disc, and a Smothering Tithe for good measure. He reveals Ob Nixilis Reignited from the Karth trigger, and activates Garruk Cursed Huntsman's ultimate to get an emblem. With Garruk dying, Karth triggers again, and Dom reveals Liliana Dreadhorde General. He then starts upticking his walkers to get their benefits, and runs out the Dreadhorde General, and upticks her to make a zombie, and then passes turn. Maximus plays a forest, and casts Feast of Succession, taking out Dom's zombies, and then makes himself the Monarch. He then casts a Reclamation Sage, destroying the Tithe. He drops an enchantment, and then sacrifices the Reclamation Sage to Spawning Pit. Moving to his end step, he brings back the Reclamation Sage, and takes out Dom's Nevernyarl's Disc. I draw and play a forest. I wonder if I've done a bad job shuffling, and I just recast my commander, and pass turn, with Miguel and I getting a Salamander token. Miguel draws and casts an air elemental, bouncing a zombie token to Dom's hand, which ceases to exist. He then passes turn. Dom draws, and once he's in his main phase, down chicks a Johnny again, which will allow him to use Liliana's ultimate. Miguel, Maximus, and I are about to lose the majority of our boards, and with a bunch of Planeswalkers still to activate, we concede the game to Dom. Game review time. So there definitely was a missed opportunity for me in being able to mess with Dom's board state, in that I could have used the Scavenger Grounds to exile his graveyard in response to the Primeval's Glorious Rebirth. This would have stopped him from getting that Ugin back, but unfortunately when I play new decks I tend to get a bit pigeonholed or at least focused on my hand more than the board state, and as a result, I missed it and only saw it now in editing. Looking at Miguel's deck, I think the card that I was impressed the most by was that Junkwinder. Right off the bat it's a Serpent, so Runo obviously wants to play it, and the fact that he makes a token copy of it, which triggers itself as it enters, plus makes an additional one, means that there are a lot of things going to get tapped when he swings with one of these, and Runo. I'm starting to get a little bit tired of Super Friends deck. They seem very strong, and especially if you can't interact with them, which for the most part after losing our board states from the Storm Giant was basically the case with Dom's deck. It's just not an archetype that I particularly enjoy playing, but I can see why people enjoy it though. Planeswalkers are very powerful. I think Maximus's Meren deck was a bit of a powered down one since most of his cards seem to be uncommon and commons. That being said, the fact that Pitiless Plunderer is like a $20 card for being an uncommon is insane to me. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, Cool Stuff Inc., Multizone, Original Magic Art, and Alter Sleeves. But it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.